to do things that leave us in disbelief. Caitlin Clark breaking the WNBA assist record with 19 of them on Wednesday night, just 25 games into her rookie season. It's unsportsmanlike on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app, also on ESPN2 this morning. Courtney Cronin, Myron Medcalf with you. Evan Canty and Michelle are off this week. You can tweet to us throughout the show. Myron's at Medcalf by ESPN. My handle at Courtney R. Cronin. You can also join in the conversation. 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. So we're headed towards the All-Star break, Myron, in the WNBA. The Olympics are coming up. Before that, this weekend, the WNBA All-Star game, where Caitlin Clark will be on hand for it. It's going to be a good chance for her, now that she's about halfway through her rookie season, to reset, to recalibrate, to maybe hit the weight room, because there's a month gap here. This is not normal by any stretch of the imagination. This doesn't happen in other leagues, but because of when the WNBA calendar takes place, which is in the middle of the summer, they now have to deal with the Olympics. And I just keep thinking about the fact that the Fever, right now, the 7th seed, they're in the mix for the playoffs. They still lost this game last night against the Dallas Wings. But you've got a player who has brought so much incredible attention to the WNBA over the course of the last 3 months. And trying to keep that momentum alive now that we're facing this gap, and when they come back, it's a completely different sports landscape. It's going to be an interesting spot to see where the WNBA picks up with when all of this ends up coming back for the second half of the season.
Yeah, I mean, Caitlin Clark is their best chance to pick that momentum back up, after the Olympics. Now, granted, I think the Olympics will help the WNBA because you'll see all those stars, Asia Wilson, everybody else playing at the highest level globally. But I think Caitlin Clark, a lot of people will anticipate her return. But to your point, college football will be back, right? We'll have the NFL, training camps, preseason games. So I think it's going to be a different landscape. But Caitlin Clark just continues to captivate the entire country, no matter what's going on. She was still the biggest story, Courtney, yesterday. And when she has a big night like that, she is above even sometimes NFL stories. So she's still the beacon for that league and will be even after this month-long break.
Yeah, it's truly remarkable watching what her season started out as. And, of course, the controversy that she found herself at the middle of, about a month and a half ago, the Sky and the Fever game, the hard foul that was heard across the sport and changed the conversation that we were having, whether it was about basketball at all. I still am not quite sure. But 25 games into her rookie season, you ask yourself the question, has she lived up to the hype? And the answer is a resounding yes. We have this Rookie of the Year conversation between her and Angel Reese. You're going to get a different answer depending upon who you talk to. But the odds this morning, just from last night's game, according to ESPN Bet, Caitlin Clark went from minus 1,000 to minus 2,000 for Rookie of the Year, while Angel Reese moves from plus 500 to plus 600. So last night's record-breaking performance, 19 assists, which ends up breaking the record that Courtney Vandersloot set. It was 18 for the Chicago Sky in 2020. Monica McNutt, who you heard there in disbelief, talking about the impact Caitlin Clark has had all season long. She said on game night last night, what had changed for Caitlin Clark since the beginning of the season was this.
It's funny because the game has slowed down, but statistically the Fever have sped up. We're coming to that game versus Minnesota, I should say. They were averaging something like 12 points per game in transition over the month of July, which put them in the top 5 in the league in terms of points in transition. They also have been able to find their way in terms of scoring in the paint. A lot of that was a byproduct of transition, but also that pick and roll. So the game has slowed down in terms of her understanding of it and her relationships and chemistry with her teammates. But it has actually sped up because playing a little bit faster for the Fever has yielded some really positive results.
That was Monica McNutt on game night following the Indiana Fever's 101-93 loss to the Dallas Wings. She was on the call for that game. But what you saw from Caitlin Clark on 10 and 19 shooting, 24 points, 19 assists, we've known her to be a prolific three-point scorer. And I do think that the casual WNBA women's basketball fan thought, okay, that's all Caitlin Clark does. But if you watched her in the NCAA tournament in March and watching, I believe it was against Colorado and then West Virginia, her continuing to hit these double-digit assist numbers, this is a huge part of her game as a facilitator. And the last couple of games, Myron, you saw her the other day when the Fever were in Minneapolis. I'm not saying she's passing up open shots, but it doesn't feel like that's what she's defaulting to as her first move out there. When you see Aaliyah Boston was the leading scorer the other night. It's changed for the Indiana Fever last couple of games where they don't need to rely on Caitlin Clark in that role. And you get to see this other incredible facet of what she does on the floor.
Yeah, I mean, the shooting is cool for SportsCenter, the big threes, but if you look at kind of what she's done in recent games, she hasn't been hitting a ton of threes. She's made like 27% of her threes over the last 6 games. Obviously, the turnover record she set on Sunday. But I think she's actually strengthened her campaign for Rookie of the Year despite those challenges because she's proven, to your point, that she is so much more than that. When I went to that Indiana Fever Lynx game on Sunday, I asked her directly, like, what has changed? And she said the chemistry of this team continues to grow. Aaliyah Boston, 28 points. They're starting to click. Kelsey Mitchell. This is becoming like a really cool three people on this team who are coming together at the right time. But I think Caitlin Clark's greatest strength is as a playmaker. And if you let her be a playmaker, as Monica McNutt said, that's when you're going to see her at her best. She just looks like she's comfortable and she's calm, and this is her natural role. Give me the ball. I'm going to make something happen. I think that's why the Fever are in the playoff hunt, and I think that's why Caitlin Clark is your Rookie of the Year.
Indiana Fever, number 1 overall right now in assists per game. Big reason why is what you saw there last night from Caitlin Clark. 19 assists. It sets a new WNBA record for assists just 25 games in. And the Rookie of the Year is hers, right? Like, we don't have to keep having this conversation unless, like, I go back and forth on this. And I've said this a couple times. What this reminds me of is 1998 and the home run race between Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, where depending on the day, like if the Cubs played last or if the St. Louis Cardinals played last, whoever's team was just, had the last game, that person was in the lead. And they went back and forth until McGwire hit 70 that year, and then Sosa ended up with 66. And the feel I have here with watching her and Angel Reese is that whoever's had the last game, that, whether it was Angel Reese and the 15 consecutive double-doubles, and of course Caitlin Clark and, the triple-double that she had about a week ago. I believe that one came against the Liberty as well, so one of the better teams in the WNBA. And then stuff like this, it's this game of hot potato, but like where it's getting launched from one player to the next. But I just can't, at this point, think that it's anybody other than Caitlin Clark, considering the contribution she's made 25 games in. And it's not just like this, a personal streak that others may or may not touch. Who knows what kind of territory that is. I mean, what Angel Reese did in 15 straight double-doubles, about 25 games into her career too, is remarkable. But this is, I have a hard time naming somebody other than Caitlin Clark for this award because it just feels like everything is trending towards her locking this up, even with the month off that we're about to encounter.
Yeah, I mean, I think Caitlin Clark's in the lead, but Angel Reese is still right there. They're both in the playoff hunt. I mean, 7 and 8, respectively, between the Fever and Sky. This month break will be interesting because, as you mentioned earlier, no other team deals with that. I think the NHL has that in the Winter Olympics, but how do they come back? So I could see a world if Angel Reese comes out strong and she leads the Chicago Sky and they go above the Fever in the standings. I mean, that could give her a better opportunity, but right now, its impact is undeniable. The team's getting better around her. I think Aaliyah Boston is so much better now playing next to Caitlin Clark. And if they stay in that 7 spot, it's going to be hard to unseat Caitlin Clark as Rookie of the Year. Listen, it's a bunch of voters. I mean, this isn't a computer system voting for this. This is actual human beings who have to fill out a ballot, Courtney. I just don't see a world where those voters don't pick Caitlin Clark and make her Rookie of the Year, especially with everything we're seeing from night to night on her.
So the standings right now, the Fever in the 7th seed, there's 12 teams in the WNBA. The majority of these teams end up making the postseason over teams that don't make the postseason. And so they're 11 and 15. Still have a losing record, and they've played, I believe that's 27 games. So they've played about 3 games more than, a couple of the other teams that we were looking at, the Liberty, the Sun, ahead of them there in the standings, 1 and 2 in the WNBA. But they have been jockeying back and forth of her positioning, 7 seed, 8 seed for that final spot in the playoffs with the Sky all season long. Sky are 10 and 14 right now. And I've asked this question a couple of times and I've thought about it. And I know that you're going to get a differing of opinions here. If we come back from this break